problem with if I was telling you the other day, if you search YouTube for jQuery, Rails and jQuery, everyone uses remote true. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is the night you can't do that. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, I got one more thing I want to add too.
Yeah.
Siernan, I have a strange behavior where a thing that renders will not render in certain screen sizes, and it will render when the console is on, but it won't render.
Interesting.
Wait, did he freeze?
Are you using Bootstrap?
I think he.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
certain that.
Who's frozen?
His box is still there, but he just.
Brad, he froze up. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, his program froze up.
Okay. Well, maybe we can get to his issue once I'm done going through my example here. Whenever he pops back in. Cool. So I've got the sample app here. It's just a simple blog application with a nav bar, got a home page, very nice styling with my title there. You got the index route to all the posts. Each post you can click on and go to that post individually. You can click on new post to get the form to build a new post. You've got tags, things of that nature. So this is all just Rails, plain vanilla Rails. So let's go through the example of turning this clicking of the posts and turning that into a non-refresh loading of all the posts. So right now, as you can see, if I click on posts, the page refreshes, and then we see all of our posts in the DOM here. So I like to start with the server. So let's think about the Rails server. The first thing we're going to look at is the controllers. So we go to post controller. Here we have the index action in my post controller. Right now we're just grabbing all the posts using active record post.all. And by default, it's rendering the HTML ERB of the index for this particular view. But what we want to do is we want to update that and have that also respond to JSON. So we want to be able to say /posts.json and get a JSON representation of all of the posts. So to do that, does anyone remember what method we use in the controller?
Yeah, you can do render at JSON, right? Yeah.
Let's say I wanted either HTML or JSON, depending on how.
Respond to.
Yep, exactly. So we can do respond _to, and then we pass that a block with any argument. Normally we use F as the argument.
No, it's mine. My burrito.
Then we can do f.html. And then that'll respond with the normal HTML. And let's actually save that and refresh. So that's our normal HTML response with the markup. Or we can do f.json, and we pass that a proc, where we render, it's a hash where we render JSON at posts. So this is the normal convention. Then when I do /posts.json, we should see a JSON representation of all of the posts here. And it's an array of objects.
Oh, cool. You can close them.
Anyone have any questions on how I did that? Cool. And let's say that I didn't want some of these fields to be rendered in JSON, then we can use that active model serializers gem to pick and choose what we want to be rendered with JSON. So I need to remember the actual gem. I think it's just active model serializers, right? Oh, I already got it there. So gem active model serializers, version 0.10. I'm just going to bundle install just in case I didn't. Awesome. Let's pull up the documentation again. Cool. I'm looking for the command. I think it's Rails G serializer, and then the name of the model we want to serialize.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I just don't know everything. I think it's real serialize, not real serializer. Though.
Serializer and then singular name, right?
Well, it's,
Let's see. Let's see if we get errors. It's thinking. Oh,
Post serializer.
I must have already done it. There we go. Oh yeah, I already did it. Sorry. All right, so we see here we got this post serializer. We can pick and choose the attributes that we want to render. So let's say that I only wanted the content. And let's say for now I want to get rid of these associations. I need to fire my server again.
Was there any reason you wanted to get rid of those associations right there?
Just so we can see the serializer in action.
Oh, okay.
There we go. So now we can add these back in, and we can add the ID and the content back in. Now we no longer have, normally by convention, if we got rid of the serializer, we're going to have all the attributes associated with a post, like created at, things of that nature. But because we wanted to pick and choose what we want to actually render as JSON, we use active model serializer.
I saw somewhere that there's something like I didn't use it, but I saw like there's an include nested attributes option.
Oh, let's check that out.
Not exactly. Like I think if you like say like I think you're on like the user serializer and it was like has many or like in this one it has many comments, then it's like include nested attributes true. I think you would get all the attributes from the comment on your JSON page. I'm not sure. I didn't really look into it because I didn't really need it, but
Right.
I saw it and was
Yeah, by default, it's going to render all of the attributes for the comments. That's
why
where
I didn't need it. But maybe it was just like maybe you can turn it off, or I don't know what it was for. I just saw it and didn't really know what.
Right. Cool. So anyone has any questions on the serializer, active model serializer? So now we do .json. Again, we get a JSON representation of all of our posts. So it looks like my back end is good to go. Now I can start working on the front end to actually display these posts to the user. So
Hey,
the
one
Rails
other
side
thing.
works. Yeah.
One other thing I noticed about this, Sunan, was that if you could call something in the console, you can ask for it in your attributes in the serializer. Like the post has a user ID, and right now your JSON data has a user ID number there. But if you wanted the user's name, you could in your post serializer where you've got attributes listed. One of them could be colon username, assuming that field's there, or whatever it is, name,
Right.
instead of just getting back the IDs. And that was like a happy thing to discover because I was trying to get that exact situation to display.
Yeah, you can definitely, that's what's cool thing about the serializers is that you can definitely fine tune whatever data you want back, from the server, which is pretty cool. Cool. All right, so now what I want to do is whenever I click on, let's say I'm out of the post route, whenever I click on post, I want to hijack the click event for that particular link. So where that is being displayed is in my layout. It's in my navigation. Nope, it's in my left nav. Here we go. Yep, and I already have a class name of all posts. So this post link already has a class name of all posts. So if I inspect that, we can see here all posts. So in my assets JavaScripts, I'm going to create a new file, and let's call it posts.js. And I'm going to declare my function or my document ready function. I'm going to use an arrow function. And in my document ready function, I'm just going to call a function called bind click handlers. And then down here, I'm going to define that function. So const bind click handlers. I'm going to use a function expression for that. Awesome. And then what I'm going to do here, let's select that particular element with jQuery. All posts.on, click. So the on method in jQuery takes in 2 arguments. The first one is the event you want to listen for. And then the second argument is the function, the callback function that you want to run when that event happens. And it takes in an event object as its parameter. So what we can do here is prevent the default behavior when this link is clicked. Because the default behavior when this is clicked is it's going to render via Rails that HTML markup. So we want to prevent that default. And let's just console log hello. So we can see here, I'm clicking it, posts aren't being rendered, but every time I click on posts, we see that counter for hello get increased. Cool, so now we've got this wired incorrectly. So what we wanna do now is, whenever this button is clicked, we wanna make a call to our backend API, to our backend server. So does anyone wanna help me either via, oh, let's use fetch. Let's use the fetch API. Who wants to help me do that?
I did it all with Ajax, so I don't remember doing fetch.
So fetch, let's take a look at fetch API. There we go, using fetch. There we go. So the convention is you call the fetch function and it takes in a URL path. So that's the first step, is calling that function. And let's actually log that in the console. So I'm going to make a fetch request. And where am I going to be making this fetch request to?
Slash posts.
.json though. What do you want to throw the JSON in now, or do you add it later?
No, we can throw it in here. Awesome. Let's log the return value of that to the console just to see what we get. Cool. So whenever you call fetch, you get back a promise. And that promise is either going to be resolved or rejected. In most cases, because we're writing our backend API, it's going to be resolved. So whenever a promise is resolved with a value, you can tack on a method called .then. So let's do that. And we can pass in an arrow function for that. That takes in the actual response. And let's log that to the console. So again, we're making a call to our post.json backend API endpoint.
And the response is basically just a JSON object.
The response is actually the
In this particular scenario, right?
in this scenario, it's actually going to be the response, the actual response object. So not the actual data that we want. To get the actual data that we want, what we're going to need to do is return that response and call the .json method. And what that'll do is it'll convert this response and extract the data that we want and pass it on to the next then call. Let me get rid of these parentheses here. Cool. So we call fetch, we get back a promise. We handle that promise with .then. We get back the response inside this .then callback. And then we call .json on the response, it'll parse the data from the response and return it onto the next .then with data as the argument to its callback. So if we log that data here, we can see, let me clear out the console. We can see now I have an array of objects, which is all my posts. This is the normal convention when using the fetch API, is you make a call to whatever backend API endpoint using fetch, then you handle that first promise response by calling .json on whatever this variable is. This can be whatever, foo, then be foo.json. Then you get back the data in the next .then. And again, this can be whatever you want.
What exactly is fetch being called on? It's just like implicitly being called on. Like I know with Ajax, you use the $, the jQuery object, and then .ajax.
So fetch is a native API to the browser, and it's supported by almost all browsers. So it's using, it's a separate JavaScript method that makes an actual API call. So it's not being called on anything in particular. I guess if you want to say it's being called on the global object, but It's not really being called on anything in particular.
Okay.
Good question. Cool. So now we have the data here. So any questions with what we've done thus far? Cool. All right, let me also point out that in my, where is it? Application.html.erb, I have this div with an ID of app container. And this is going to be the div that I'm going to use to redraw my DOM or repaint my DOM anytime I want something to be handled with jQuery. So no matter what, whether I'm refreshing the page and it's being handled by Rails, because I put the yield keyword inside my app container, it's all still going to work whether you're painting the DOM via Rails or painting it via jQuery. So anytime I need to paint the DOM, I would just grab this app container and then just inject HTML into that app container, and it's going to replace whatever is being yielded at that point. Cool. All right. So now what we need to do, now that we have our data, which is going to be an array. Let me change this. Response. Awesome. I'm going to wrap this in curly braces now and handle that inside here.
JavaScript, pretty much RES as response, and then data for data is the standard practice. That's what I see a lot.
Yeah, you're either going to see RES or sometimes they do the full response, but that's a normal convention. Yeah. Okay. If we want to be semantic, we can call this posts. We're getting an array of posts. But now we have to iterate over these objects that we get back here. So in order to do that, well, first off, let's do this. Whenever we click on posts, let's clear this app container. So, but to do that, I'm going to select it here. I'm going to say .html and pass in hello. So now we can see I've replaced whatever was there with hello. So now we've got that wired in and working okay. Cool. So now what we want to do to start off is clear out that app container. Because again, we don't want to add the blog app. We want to replace whatever is inside this box altogether with the new posts. Otherwise, this blog app will still be there when we click on posts. So that's why we want to clear the HTML first. And then we can start repainting the DOM. So to do that, I want to iterate through each one. And we can do that either through a for loop or a for each. I like a for each, which takes in an individual post. And does anyone have any questions with the arrow functions that I'm using? I think you guys have covered arrow functions already, so I don't want to just assume you guys are aware of the usage of arrow functions.
Um,
It'd be nice to see a verbose version of it, just to
Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
because I know they exist. I just haven't used them. I haven't sort of evolved to that point, I guess.
Gotcha. No problem. So this, I do something like that. So that'd be the same exact syntax as using an arrow function.
oh,
So it's an anonymous function with an argument of post. But the way I do it is just like that. There's really no difference.
Yeah.
It's just syntactic.
That's cool though.
Yeah.
And for each is, if you were to do for and do the thing with the different arguments, is that just a more verbose way of doing a loop?
Yep.
Yep.
So we do
Okay.
something like for let I equal 0.
Yeah.
I is less than post.length. You know.
Okay.
So it's I like for each. It's a little more semantic. And
You also don't need the parentheses for your event or post either, right? Since you're
Yep.
using arrow.
yeah, so if the arrow function only takes in one argument, am I coming through okay? Let me mute everybody for now. So just unmute yourself if you need to talk. Yeah, so if the arrow function only has one argument, you don't need to wrap them in parentheses. So if you see me doing that without wrapping an argument name in parentheses, it's because the arrow function only has one argument to it. So that's normal convention.
Yeah, it looks like so foreign to me like that, but I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it does look kind of strange, at first glance, but you get used to it, and then it starts to become, well, for me, it's like it's entirely readable.
I'm like, I did my all my jQuery stuff using
ES5.
not this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I'm the opposite. Like everything I've done, like is ES6, and I use arrow functions almost everywhere. That I don't know when to not use them.
Yeah, I mean, again, ES5 is still widely recognized out there, so still using that's no problem. But yeah, the more you can get comfortable with ES6 syntax, the better you're going to be. Cool. So now what I've done here in my iterator, my for each, and again, for each takes in a callback function, which is this right there, with an argument of each individual post. So similar to how to your Ruby.each iterator, you pass in an argument to the block of whatever singular item you're iterating through. And I'm just logging that post to the console. So we can see here, we've got individually logged to the console, 5 separate objects. So now I want to use the response that I get back from my server and utilize a JavaScript model object. So that's one of the requirements you're going to have for this particular assessment is utilizing a JavaScript model object. And that's either with a constructor function, and that's probably what I would recommend you use. You can also do ES6 classes, but I think for purposes of the assessment, they want you to use a constructor function. So here, a constructor function is always named using a capital letter with whatever object or model object you're defining. So we have this function of capital P post, and then we're going to define the different arguments that we're going to pass in. So a post has ID, a title, content, a user, and an array of comments. Cool. And then what we can do inside our constructor function is assign those attributes using the this keyword. And the this is always going to be whatever object we construct using the new keyword. So this.id equals ID, this.title equals
You also
title.
just can you just pass post one argument of like attributes and then say this.id equals attributes.id?
Yeah, so something like have it take the actual post object.
Yeah, because it's going to be when you're creating a new post, you're going to be feeding it the JSON object that you're getting back from the fetch request.
Yeah, so you can do that. So rather than naming each individual argument, you can just pass in the full object and then parse that information inside the constructor function. Either way, yeah, it works. Cool.
Wouldn't it be?
Sorry, this, yeah.
Yeah, this.
This
That's just the way I did it, so I just want to make sure it's the same thing.
equals post dot ID. This dot user. Cool. This dot comments equals post dot comments. Yeah. Cool. I kind of like that a little better, because then you're not naming 7 different arguments in one. Cool. So then inside our iterator, let's take advantage of our constructor function. And the way we do that is by declaring a new variable. Let's we can use let new post equals new post. And we're going to pass in this individual post that we're iterating with. What this will do is it'll create a new post object that's assigned to this local variable, and that's going to have these particular attributes for that object. So then if we were to log that new post here, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individual post model objects, each with their own attributes of comments, content, ID, title, and user, so on and so forth. Cool. So now that we have a constructor function for a post, we can start to declare different prototype methods on that particular post and maybe do some formatting using those prototype methods. So just to be simple, I'm just going to declare one. And the way we do that is we reference the model object, and then its prototype, and then the name of the function. So I'm going to say format index, and we use a function expression for this. Something like that. And then what we can then do is start to build out the markup that we want to display to the user. So I'm going to say let post HTML, set that to an empty string at first. Then we can, actually, no, let's use template strings. That way we can do multi-line template strings and not have to worry about string concatenation. And just to be...
Does it have to be backticks for that? Sorry, I just don't know.
Yes, it has to be backticks for template strings. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So now let's do an H1. And whatever object makes a call to this method, we have a reference to that object's attributes. And the way we reference that object's attributes is using the this keyword. So this.title. And let's just start off with that for now. And let's return post HTML. HTML. Hang on, let me just pop into the chat just in case there are any questions. Okay, cool. Awesome. So then what we can do here, now that we've created a new post object, we can call this particular method on that prototype. Because again, every instance of post has the ability now to call this method on the prototype. So then what we can do here is new post dot format index. And then let's say let post HTML equal that. And we can use jQuery to select the app container. And let's append it with that post HTML. Is everyone following? Any questions?
Yeah, question for you. Do you use the same variable name in your prototype method post HTML? Does it, I guess it doesn't matter. It just happens to be the same.
Coincidental, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good question.
Let is lexical, right? It's not. It can't.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the
I
same
know it's
scope.
fine. I just, for some reason, I wanted further reasoning on why it's fine. Sorry,
It's
guys.
scoped to that block or function, but we're not using that inside a particular block. Awesome. We get undefined. Let's see why. I'm returning post HTML, calling this.title, calling format index. So we're returning that HTML markup, and we're appending with that HTML markup. Let's log post HTML here. Okay, so for whatever reason, this.title new post dot format index new post. Don't panic, guys. Figure it out. Yeah, so there's the new post. It's got a title. So then when we call new post dot format index, we should have a reference. Okay, let's do this. Oh, I know why. Okay. Yeah, can't use arrow functions for prototype methods. Otherwise, the arrow function is going to be scoped to, let's actually keep that there. And let's console.log this.
Should be window, right?
Yep. So now we need to change this to function. Cool.
Would it be any different if you did the class method and the prototype method was within the definition of the whole class? Instead of doing function post, you did class. Would that make any difference?
So here's why you don't want to do that is because for every new instance that you create, because classes are really just syntactic sugar on the constructor function. So they work the exact same way. So if we were to define that method on the constructor function, then for each new instance that we create, it's going to have memory allocated for that function, which if that function is doing the same thing for no matter what post we have, it doesn't need its own memory. That's why we create the prototype function, because then it's all instances of posts can utilize that one method, right? Good question.
Okay.
There we go. Awesome. Now I've got the titles. Cool. Yeah, so no arrow functions for that. Sorry, ES6. Cool. All right, so get rid of this. Get rid of this. Excellent. So now, another thing I want to do is when I click on posts, I want my URL to update. You know, I don't want it to still just be localhost 3000. I want it to be localhost 3000/posts. Right? So to do that, we need to take advantage of the history object. So push state. Manipulating browser history, web APIs. So here we have this method called push state. So the push state method takes in 3 parameters. The first 2 we don't really need to worry about. It's the third one, which is the new URL we want to append to the existing URL whenever we call that method. So to do that, we can use this syntax. And let's do that whenever the all post button is clicked. And for now, I'm just going to pass in null for the first 2. And then what we want to do is append posts at the end. So if we were to go here, go home, click on posts, now we see posts get added to the URL. And it's whatever we add as a third argument will get appended to the URL.
That's awesome. That just solved the problem that I'm pretty sure I was going to have that I really wasn't sure about. Awesome.
Yeah, because I mean, essentially, you want to be able to, whether it's refreshing the page, because let's say the user refreshed the page from here, you want them to be able to still get the posts if they refresh the page. So that's why.
Yeah, an issue I was not having. I have like this thing that has like you saw my app the other day, but it has the thing with the entries, and like you can browse through different entries. But also at the bottom of it is there's a form that I can add to the entry. So I was pretty if the way the form works is that it finds the entry by the params number, by the params ID.
Right.
So if you're switching to the next one and the params isn't updating, it's just gonna enter a new thing to the entry. It's gonna enter to the wrong one. So that just totally solved that problem.
Cool. So yeah, I'm not going to go through the exercise of adding the rest of the markup for the index page because that's just simple, formatting the HTML here. I want time to go through doing a show resource real quick because we're coming up on time here. Cool. So, but I will make this clickable. So we want an href. And we want /posts/this.id. Looks good. Let's make sure. Awesome. Now we see if we hover over the links, we have access to /post/2, 4, 5, and so on. Cool. So the idea is right now when I click on that, it refreshes the page and uses Rails to grab the show resource. But what I want to do is have it so that if I click on it, it just, again, repaints the DOM and makes a call to my backend API server and returns that JSON. So again, starting with the server, we go to post controller, we go to our show. What we want to do here is respond to, and then f.html, f.json, pass in the proc. We're going to render JSON with post. And the reason why I can reference post is because I have this for action hook that calls this function set post, which down here in my protected, I'm finding the post according to the params of the ID. So that's why you can see that here. Cool. So now if I were to go to post/for.json, now we get back a JSON representation of just our fourth post. Cool. If we go to our post.js, we got this bind click handlers. Now we need right here. First off, let's see if I have any classes assigned to my post yet. So right now I don't. If it's the traditional index, they have, oh, they don't have any. Interesting. Okay, let's add one.
You have to add a class when you do your fetch request right here.
Yep.
On the post prototype format index.
Exactly. So let's do it to the H1. Actually, let's do it to the href.
Anyway, at any point, can you just instead of doing it here, can you do it up in your fetch request with like a JSON, a jQuery add attribute method or something?
You could do that. Yeah. Either one. I kind of like adding it to the markup because it's more markup related.
Yeah.
So let's see. posts. There we go, show link. Awesome. You know what? I have to close that there. There we go. Cool. We got the show link. Awesome. So now what we can do is right here, reference that particular DOM element. So class of show link dot on click. Oops. I'm going to call a callback function. I'm missing that. E dot prevent default. Cool. Now we want to make a call to our backend API endpoint. So I'm just going to use fetch again. And we are going to, you know, what we don't have is the data ID. So we want to be able to reference that ID here. Like that. Okay. Gotta remember the syntax for that. 1 second.
Could you just set the set a variable the URL like once you click it, just inspect the event and then
You know what?
attribute?
Yeah, you know what? We should be able to reference. Yep.
Whatever they clicked.
Yeah.
And then you can just say fetch URL and you'll have it set, right?
Yep. Oh, you know what?
Would a debugger be easier?
I know what's going on. Because this class of show link isn't getting added until we click on our posts link.
Right.
It's not read, you know, into the DOM. So we need to choose a parent that we have this on click handler. Then as a second argument to on, we specify that particular class. So any current and future show link classes attach this click handler to. So again, because right now in the beginning, Rails and JavaScript have no idea what this show link
Yeah,
class
the page is already loaded and then it's not loaded again. It's just
exactly. So it's not until we click on posts do we add this show link to this link. So now we see. So this is the window again. So you know what? Let's get rid of the arrow function. There we go. We'll still need to parse. You know what? Let's just add the data ID.
What about event.currentTarget?
Oh,
Would that help at all?
Let's try that actually. E.current target. I haven't used that.
I think that's it. That's how I would That's the same thing.
So it's the same thing, yeah. Let's just add the data ID. And the data ID is going to be this.id. So if we were to inspect, now we have this data ID attribute. Cool. So now we can refer to that here by first off, let's just double check the syntax for that. So grab data ID jQuery. This dot attr data ID. Something like that. Nope. Oh, you know what? I need to wrap it as a jQuery selector. There we go. Awesome. So now what we can do is let ID equal that. And then now we can make a call to posts /ID JSON. And then it's pretty much going to be very similar. This is going to be an individual post. And let's close that. And let's console.log that post. There we go. Awesome. Then we would go through the whole thing of formatting, probably have something similar. Format show. Don't need a link this time, so I get rid of that. Let's just do an H3. Oops, this dot title. Oops. Cool. Format show. Looks good. Let's try it. Nope.
Did you clear out the, you have to clear that out first?
Ah. Yes, 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 yes.
Oh, at the bottom there.
There we go. Awesome. Then again, you'd use format show to add whatever markup you want. And it's pretty much the same thing. Probably want to clean up a lot of this. Maybe something like after history.push state, I'd probably want to call a method like get posts and then extract this out into a separate method just to clean it up. So const get posts. That makes a fetch call. And then what we can do here, do a separate method to parse everything and just kind of make it a little more modular to clean it up a little bit. But that's all just cleaning up stuff. Any questions? This is a lot of information.
If you were to use Ajax instead, is it like it's like .get, right? Or dot? I can't remember.
So yeah, there are a couple of different methods you can use. Let's go through one of them. Let's do the
Well, Ajax, you just said it. You just said the parameters and like what kind of like method is get. I think there's also a get and a post method.
Right.
There are.
Yeah, if you use just the Ajax method for jQuery, then it takes in one argument of an object with a number of different properties. So one of them is method. It'd be a get. Another one would be the URL. Then it'd be /posts. Then I think those are all we need. Then you can have the success function that gets called, that gets the data.
Well, I think I just tacked it onto the end of the get after the curly braces, like dot success. No.
Yeah, so you can either do that or do dot done.
Okay.
That also takes in a callback function. So either one of those works. Let's just see this work in action here. So yeah,
Then by default, if you don't specify data type, are you going to get back HTML in your list of attributes there?
yeah. Let's see it in
I
action.
think it depends on the endpoint. I think because at post the endpoint.
So you see what my response was? The data
HTML.
that I got back, I got the HTML. But let's say I do post.json. I get back the data.
Yeah.
So because our API endpoint responds to both HTML or JSON, we can specify it in the GET request.
You know, a funny thing about this Ajax thing, where you have method, I saw documentation that said type, and it works. So you could, instead of saying method, you could say type. I guess it's type of request. But confused me for a while.
Yeah, let's take a look. I've seen that type too. Yeah, so here are the settings, which is a plain object, which is again what we're passing in here. Let's see. Content type, context, data, that's for post requests, data type. Where is type? There's the method, the HTTP method to use for the request, either post, get, or put. Where is type? There we go. An alias for method. So
Yeah, there we
it's
go.
pretty much the same, yeah. They can be interchangeable. Yeah, I mostly just use method.
Is there any magic you could do if you wanted to quickly replace the DOM and replace an individual post with the next post? Because I jumped through big hoops to make that happen.
All right. Yeah, I've got a few minutes. Let's walk through this because yeah, this is a little tough because normally, let's say that we had a next button that you can like click next, right?
Yeah.
Let's do that real quick here. Class equals next. Let's do next post. All right. Oh, you know what? Let me pull this back in. Let me get rid of that. Cool. So now what we want to do, let me make sure we've got our class, next post, awesome. Let's add a click handler to it. You know what? Document on, click, next post function. Awesome. So what we want to do here is we're going to want to make a call to our backend API endpoint. I'm going to declare a new one called next post. Oh, we'll just call it next. So then
Another jQuery selector in the argument of next post, or is it just going to know that it's class next post?
we need the data ID. So you know what? It's going to be, here we go. It's going to be posts / ID / next. And what we need to grab this here. And these need to be backticks. Excellent. So we need in our backend API, we need an action. We'll just call it next. And in our routes, Sorry if I'm going crazy fast. We need a get request to posts ID next. That goes to posts next. Anytime somebody hits this route, it's going to call this action in the posts controller. And what we want to do here is have some logic in the post model to grab the next post, or if we're on the last post, get the first one. So we need some logic, because if you keep on clicking next, you're going to get to the last post eventually. So you want a mechanism for them to start over at the beginning of the posts. So to do that, let's Rails controller get next. Well, we'll just say post. They might even have that. They have this. Kind of like this one better. There we go. So they have this in our post model. We can, oh man, I already had it. Okay, so here is the instance method I declared in my post class or post model, where it references the post that's calling it, and it's using an active record query where the ID is greater than that post that's calling this instance method. So what this active record query is going to do is grab all the posts with the ID that are greater than the post that's calling it. And then we'll grab the first one of those, because that'll be the next post.
Oh, that's
right?
pretty cool.
So if post, okay, you know what, let's do that real quick. Okay, we got that. That means I need, in my set post, I need to add the next one to it. Get this API show. That's from a previous one. Cool. So it's going to grab the post, and then what I want to do in my next action is at next post equals post.next. It's going to call that instance method, grab the next post, set it equal to this instance variable. Then I'm just going to respond. Actually, I'm just going to render JSON.
Because you know it's going to be that.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. So now what we can do is in our, whoops. So this is post of 2. Just want to make sure I have the IDs right. So this is post 2. So if I call post/2/next, I should get a JSON representation of post 4, because that's the next post, right? And I get an error. What's self? So self, that looks good. Let's go to the class.
I think you got to call it on the class, not the post instance or object.
So we need to call it on the instance because it needs to refer to its own ID.
Oh, okay.
So self is the post. So where?
I've never seen a where thing like that, though. That's a funny.
Is it because has to do with this? Like when I did it the other day, I have it on a certain collection of entries. Like it might be trying to go to post 3, but there is no post 3.
Right.
Self-dot
Well, no,
where.
because it should grab all posts that are greater than the ID of 2.
Then shouldn't it be capital post dot where? I mean, if you're searching.
You know what? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying, but I think Sonia had a point where then it doesn't know what the ID is.
It will know now. Yeah, you're right. It will know because we're calling, the instance is calling next, but inside we're.
Oh, and it's referring the ID to what next is being called on. Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
you guys are right.
Better than what I meant to do.
So let's do this. Let's do this in the console since we're in the Rails console. We should be able to do post.where. ID is greater than ID dot first. Then we get an error.
So how does it know what ID is, though? That's is it self.id?
Well, the implicit receiver would be self.
Self?
Here,
Okay.
so, hang on, let me just double check something.
Do you need a question mark after the greater than sign?
I think that is what's going on. I think you might be right. Yep. Good job, Jay. Good call. Okay. I refresh. There we go.
So the question mark becomes a variable, and it's a parameter, and your parameter you're asking it about is self.id.
Yeah, we're whitelisting the variables just to prevent SQL injection.
That's cool.
So if we're in the last post, let's just double check what the return value is if we're in the last post, which is an ID of 7. So we get back null. So if no, we'll do it in the. I'm trying to think of where the best place to do this is. Make it a local variable. If post, then return the post. This is a little ugly, but post.first. So now if I access 7, it should give me the first one. Yeah, ID of 2. So now we've got the logic in the model. Now we can utilize that, anywhere else. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. That's great.
That's great. And you
Can I
don't
ask
care what the IDs are.
Can I ask one more question? I know we're over time. You don't have to do it. I'm curious. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. With my project, it's like a bunch of group projects, stuff like that, and like my index, when it renders the projects, they're in like little think like Google. They're like little hoverable cards that are clickable and stuff like that. If I'm doing this in jQuery, do I have to, for that formatting, do I have to like define how these little cards and all that stuff in my prototype method?
For that markup, using that markup?
Yeah.
Yes, you would,
Great.
unfortunately. So
Great.
yeah, it's a lot of markup you're going to be writing, but you're going to write it somewhere, whether it's in the html.arb or in the JavaScript files. You're writing that markup somewhere. And that's why they created these template strings, is to make it a little easier to write markup rather than pulling in, a framework.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad for my Rails project. I only I think less than 30% of my links, and just I tried to not use Rails helpers because they just got they got really confusing since a lot of my stuff was really complex. I tried to just write out plain HTML, so hopefully that helps me out with this. No, but seriously, thank you very much. Like it brought back pretty much everything I thought I forgot. I needed a refresher.
All right, guys. Well, as you start working on your projects, I know a couple of you are at the end of the road as it relates to that, but for you that are approaching it or are currently working on it, if you have any questions, feel free to ping me on Slack. Happy to help.
Thanks. Can you can you push this code to GitHub or something?
Yes. I'll push the updated, because I do have the repo here. Let me put it in the Slack channel.
And next again, this was great.
This is the repo. It's gonna be on the solution branch, all of this new code.
Okay.
For that repo that I posted there. So I'll give you guys a minute to grab that, and then I will let you all go enjoy the rest of your day.
Are you pushing up this video? Oh, you're still recording. Are you pushing up this video to the instructor app?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll post that as soon as it compiles, but I'll also push up this code. Right. Actually, I'll just do it right now, just so I don't forget. I'm pretty sure I'm pushing it to the solution branch. Awesome. Cool. All right, guys. Have a good rest of the night. I'm sure I'll be talking to you all soon.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Fernand. Bye, guys.
Take care.